Welcome to Puck Talk CS. I'm Matthew Mugner, your host, alongside Colby Cohen. He's done virtually everything in the world of hockey, and it's
Mm.
great to have you on, Colby. I want to know what your experience is like hosting Morning Cuppa Hockey. It's innovative. I enjoy the show, and I want to hear from your end how it's been so far.
Yeah, honestly, really enjoy it. My background was really in the traditional TV, you know, background, I guess, and radio as well. I did quite a bit of radio too. But I love it. It's fun. It forces me to watch a lot of hockey. Which is a probably a blessing and a curse at times. But no, it's a lot of fun, and I didn't really know what to expect with the show. I didn't really know how the audience would develop, and it's turned into something that other than having to work with Johnny, I look forward to it every morning.
That is awesome. And how long were you part of Daily Faceoff before the show, or was that part of the show?
So I have been just like working with those guys for a couple of years now.
Okay.
I've been subbing in and doing stuff. Frank Saravalli and I have known each other since we're little kids. We played hockey together growing up. Um,
Okay.
and we have a good relationship. So, I've just been kind of pitching in and doing some stuff with him. And then the whole show kind of came alive through that relationship and with Johnny's idea, and it's really where it all developed.
Now, you talk often on the show, I guess to cut to the chase with hockey talk, you often drive home how important details are in hockey. Like, whenever you're talking about specific players, it's detail oriented, especially the rookies or the younger guys. What details and common discourse in the hockey world do you think are not valued enough?
Um, Phew, that's a good question. Listen, I think that I was really fortunate to play for certain coaches that were really all about the details. I mean, Bruce Cassidy was uh, as detailed of a guy as you could play for, and David Quinn, I'd put him right there as well. I mean, details were it was just everything. And when you watch players in the National Hockey League, like everybody can skate. Not 70-80% of the league guys are really similar. And I think details is really what sets a lot of guys apart, guys who their body position is always right, and there's certain areas of the ice where they're, super thorough. And one detail I always talk about is puck watching, is keeping your head on a swivel. I mean, I know people actually, kind of joke about it in our live chat about me talking about puck watching, because it's the difference between a National League player and an American League player. And I'm always really comfortable talking about these things because there are things I didn't do well, and there are things that kept me out of the NHL on a full-time basis. So, I think um, gap gaps for defensemen. I think the best defensemen in the NHL don't give you any space. I think stick positioning. The best players in the NHL defend with their sticks. They make so many plays with their sticks and their feet, and they take up so much space with their wingspan. And I just think when you start, adding all those things up, I think that really can create a detailed hockey player. And of course, there's exceptions to the rules. There's the guys who are just better; they're more talented, but that's the smaller percentage of the league, right? And so I think when it comes to those types of things, gaps and sticks and players that play with their head on a swivel as compared to puck watching, guys who get below the puck in the defensive zone, get above the puck in the offensive zone. Like, those are things that make a winning team. And usually the team that wins the cup is the team with the best details. It's everybody works hard in the National Hockey League. Everybody skates. Everybody, all teams have some degree of physicality. Everybody has a certain structure they're trying to play, but who's got the best details? And that's usually the team that wins. I mean, like Vegas probably is the best detailed team right now out west. I mean, you could argue a few others. Colorado's really good. Are their details as good as Vegas? Probably not. So often it's the difference, in my opinion, is just those little details of the game, and playing inside the dots and handing guys off and communicating and just things that go unnoticed because the game is so fast and to a lot of people looks so chaotic. But when a team's really good and playing really well, it's really not chaotic. It's almost poetry or artwork or something along those lines.
All right, and I got to get the Ranger question, and I'm sure you got to talk about it all the time because of Johnny. But with, I think something else that I often talk about on our show is just about having those valuable players that aren't the skill players. And I try and drive that home. I feel like sometimes it falls on deaf ears overall online as well. But the Borgen re-signing, like outside of the money, how important is it to have a player of that brand on a team?
I mean, listen, every contract has a value associated with it, and every player has a different level and type of value, and you may love a player at 4 million, but if that same player made 8 million, you don't love them, right? But you need guys like Borgen. You need players that every coach's dream is to have a number of players that they send out on the ice and they know exactly what they're going to get. They're predictable, they're consistent. The highs are not that high, but the lows are not that low. And they don't fluctuate between an A and a D, right? They're C plus to B plus level players. Every once in a while, you may throw in an A minus or an A, and every once in a while they might have a C minus, but they're guys that you just know, and you put them out on the ice night after night, and you know what you're going to get. And I think with Borgen, I think that's what they look at. They look at a guy that there's no questions. It's we know what we're getting from him night in and night out, shift in and shift out. And you better believe that people that say, oh, he's only played a few games, they have 150 reports on Will Borgen from the last 4 years. Like, that's how this works. There's a entire pro scouting team on a pro scouting department on every NHL team. And what do? They go to games every night of the week in their different regions. They file reports on NHL players and AHL players. And then when there's a trade that comes up, the GM reaches out to the head pro scout and says, what do you think? You've seen this player 9 times. You've wrote 10 reports. We've got 37 reports on player. So they already know what they're getting with Borgen. Sure, he's fit nicely, but they didn't just write him that contract after 2 weeks of being a New York Ranger. They wrote him that contract with a lot of due diligence, right? That's any player. That's not specific to him. And so again, you have a guy who is what you're getting. And when your defensive coach is making the changes and Peter Laviolette's putting his lineup together, it's really valuable to have guys like that. The more guys like that you have, the more success you're going to have within your lineup. Listen, Artemi Panarin is going to have bigger highs and lows, right? Mika Zibanejad, most of these high-end players, their highs are way higher, but their lows are way lower. And that's where guys like Borgen can be really valuable to a team.
I love that response, and I think, I certainly agree with that as well. And you've also worn many hats in the hockey world. First of all, very jealous that you got to hug Rand right after the Quinnipiac Natty. But second, the bigger question I have for you is how would you sell someone who's never watched college hockey before on watching college hockey? We see in football, there are some pro college football fans where they'll only watch college ball and pro professional ball. How would you sell someone on watching college hockey?
Tell them to watch the Bean Pot. Tell them to watch the Frozen Four. Take them to a game at Matthews Arena. Take them to a game at Yost. Look, the difference between an NHL game and a college game is that at an NHL arena, even the really good ones, there's a corporate environment. There's a lot of people in suites. There's people entertaining clients. You go to a college game, the student sections don't sit down. The band doesn't stop playing. It's just a different energy. It's a different vibe. It's a different atmosphere. And it's just got to be for you. I mean, I obviously love college hockey. I love what I do with college hockey as far as broadcasting goes. It's a lot of fun to be a part, especially on the biggest stage for college. But it's, most people that are NHL fans that get to witness and go see a game in one of those places, they love it. And I can't tell you how many people in our Morning Cup of Hockey chat that are kind of have been awakened a little bit from the college hockey that we talk about, and they're hooked. And not to mention, more than ever, the stars are coming from college hockey. Like, if you're a New York Ranger fan, you're watching Boston College because you want to watch Gabe Perreault and Drew Fortescue, who's going to play in the NHL. I mean, Drew Fortescue might be the best defensive defenseman in the NCAA. I mean, he is going to play in the National Hockey League. He is going to be a good, sound defenseman in the National Hockey League, a guy that every team will need. And look at Ryan Leonard. Look at Macklin last year. Look at Will Smith. Like, you get to watch some of the best players in the world outside of the National Hockey League, playing for a school. And it's a great atmosphere, and it's just a different energy. And as somebody who watches our show, it's something that I love.
Yeah, college hockey is certainly great. Obviously, you have an impact in that world still with broadcasting, and kind of shifting gears now to Four Nations. Who is your pick to win that tournament? I know obviously NHL talk's going to fall off a little bit in the next few weeks.
You know what? Look, I think obviously the U.S. on paper is an unbelievable roster, but if Sweden and Finland are playing, are winning, end up with more points, like it wouldn't surprise me. Like I'm always going to be biased towards the Americans, but again, you've got four teams that are all capable of winning. Like, I don't really care what Canada's goaltending situation is like. Look at the players that they have. They've got McDavid, they've got McCarr, they've got McKinnon. Like, Brad Marchand might end up on their fourth line. I mean, come on. So, you've got four great nations, and yeah, it's an exhibition tournament. I think it'll be phenomenal. Hard to handicap because it's not a traditional tournament. There's not going to be a bunch of games and then a round, and then a semifinal and a final. It's not quite built like that. So, wait until the next Olympics and ask me that question again, who I think is going to win gold at the next Olympics. And I think that's something I'll have a little bit more of a handle on.
Yeah, you saw Petrangelo today will not be participating, so I think that'll be a conversation the next few days as well about how sincere the guys take it. But I want to leave this to at the last question for you as kind of uh, I guess a platform. You have the connection between your faith and hockey, and I think that's been evident. What you say online, what you speak about on the show. How important is that to you to have your faith and involved in hockey and the hockey world?
Listen, I'm a big fan of personal choice. And as you can see by my hat, and as you can see over my shoulder hanging on the Beanpot banner, the bring them home necklace that I have, in support of the hostages and that are stuck right now, across the other side of the world. But I'm not somebody that ever wants to push other things on other people. I've always had my faith. I grew up in a household with two Jewish parents. Funny enough, going through all the processes of my brothers and I all getting bar mitzvahs and going through all that. And it's a shame I never got to play in the Maccabee games. The one year I was supposed to go, I ended up having to have sports hernia surgery. Billy Jaffe was the coach that year. And Doug Friedman, who is a former BU guy who's the coach of the Maccabee games for this summer, is like, come on, I still think you should come and play. And I'm like, I don't think I can leave my family for 3 weeks to come over there. But look, I'm gonna always stand up for what I believe in, whether it's popular, whether it's not. I'm somebody that believes in second chances. I'm somebody that gives people the benefit of the doubt. And listen, when I'm passionate about something, I'm going to support it. I'm passionate about a number of things. We talk about it on the show a lot, but I'm never going to push it on other people. I think I love when guys, like, I'm watching the NFL game last night. And I'm watching the interviews that the players did, and Jalen Hurts from the Eagles. Like, I think one of the first things he talked about was God and how important that is to him. And I think Patrick Mahomes did the same thing. He said none of this would be possible without without God. I forget the exact way he put it. And listen, I think that's great. I think people should do what makes them happy. And I think people should support things that are meaningful to them, as long as they're not harmful to other people. I think that's the key. I'm all for whatever it is that makes you happy, whatever choices you want to make in life, as long as you're not harming other people. As long as you're not harming, people who can't stand up for themselves. And when it comes to, I think some of the things you're talking about, obviously it's been a hot button topic, with rising amounts of anti-Semitism in the United States. I just feel like I do have a platform and I do have a voice. And I want to make sure that people out there do know that there are people not afraid to step up and say how they feel and support them. And again, it's just a choice that I've always been that way with everything that I do. It's not just religion. It's not just hockey. I am that way with my family as well, probably stubborn to a fault. But I just look, I believe in the freedom of choice, the freedom of expression. Again, it's something I've never been afraid to support Anthony D'Angelo publicly. And we've had him on our show a number of times. And people say, well, how could you associate with a person like that? And, there's been a million other things like that where, people feel one way and they don't accept the other way. And I say to them, listen, that's okay. You get to make that decision. You get to decide who you support and who you don't support. And I'm not going to tell you you're right or you're wrong. It's not for me to do. I got 2 little kids. I got a wife. I got a family. What we do here is matters to us, but it doesn't have to matter to anybody else. And that's kind of the way we try to be in my house. That's the way that I was raised. But listen, I think there's room for people to, express themselves artistically, religiously. I think there's opportunities for people to go out there and publicly say and do what it is that they want, as long as they're not harming other people. And that's the important thing. So I was never somebody who finished a game and had a big moment. And you can look back on any of my moments in my career, and I never said like I want to thank God or anything like that. It's never been my thing. For me, it's always been family. That's always been number one, especially now that I have my own kids and my own little inner circle and family. But when athletes do that, I always appreciated that. And I think it helps guys. I think it gives guys a little bit of an extra boost. I think it helps guys kind of connect with things that, it's difficult when you're in a situation and you're like Patrick Mahomes is like one of one, right? Like a guy like that. So we don't know what that guy's going through. We don't know what his life is like. If God helps him get through his day-to-day routine and gives him strength, whether you and I believe it or think it's nonsense or we believe it, it's who cares what we think? It's what works for him. So that's just how I am, and that's how I've always wanted to live. And I'm really proud to be Jewish, and I'm really proud of all people that stand up for what they believe in anything. Like, I always give people credit for having it in them to go against the grain if they believe in it, and they're not just being phony and looking for attention. I've always liked that, and a lot of people disagree with me, and that's okay. I mean, even if you've been in our chat, excuse me, like I have the unpopular opinion a lot of times, but I do believe that our chat and our following, they appreciate that I'm going to genuinely tell you how I feel, and I'm not just going to tell you what I think you want to hear. And I'm kind of happy that I was raised that way.
No, I really respect that, Colby. And first, thanks for coming on. And I think that's part of the show's success as well. I think your personality, Johnny's personality, shows is extremely genuine, which I don't
Johnny's the
really
best.
think you. Yeah, you got like I don't think, I'm more of a consumer. I'm trying to make my way in the world, but for someone that's always listening, it's nice to hear genuine personality
Mm.
come through, and it doesn't feel like it's, the mic's on.
Yeah.
So, and I also,
No,
extremely respect, and I love that the first Tony D'Angelo conversation over the summer was like, for me, I felt like it was this glimpse into a situation that no one else was going to touch.
Mhm.
So I think, personally, I love to hear your perspective on, how you approach things. And I really appreciate that you came on tonight, Colby. Thanks so
Well
much.
and like with him, listen, a lot of the criticism that he receives, he deserves it. And he's made his own bed and he's had issues with coaches and like that stuff's on him. And he made mistakes when he was a young kid, like bad mistakes. But, you know, look, when Trevor Connolly was leading up to the draft and Trevor Connolly got into some issues for some anti-Semitic things that he did, I was willing to have him on our show and talk about it. We told his agents, you're welcome to come on and we will talk about it and we will hear you out. Like, you make a mistake as a young kid, like, you get an opportunity to talk about it. I don't believe in canceling people. I don't believe in that, right? I think let somebody come on and talk about it. Anthony made some mistakes. He's been humbled by a lot of them. Again, you want to criticize his defense? Criticize his defense. Has he had issues with coaches? Absolutely. But when you hear about him not getting along with other teammates is when you're like, all right, like give this guy a platform because we know that's not true. We just know that that's not true. And we've had numerous guests who've come on our show and like, how you can tell if a guy's loved by his teammates is by how many weddings he gets invited to every summer, right? And I got to tell you, he's been in a lot of weddings, a lot of NHL weddings. He's been up there in that groomsmen group, right? And you don't have to agree with him politically. Okay. That's your choice. But like, don't dislike somebody for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. And again, whether it's Trevor Connolly, we offered him to come on our show, whether it's Anthony coming on our show to talk about things. We were talking about having Joel Quenneville on our show and I reached out to Stan Bowman before he got hired and invited him to come on our show and talk about these things. Like, I'm not afraid to talk about these things. I'm like you. I want to hear what people have to say. I'm curious what people have to say, and I want to make my own decisions, right? I don't want to make decisions based on other people's information. I want to make decisions based on my own information. And so that's why we don't shy away from that stuff. And that's why we're not afraid to bring those topics up when someone like him comes on our show and we're not afraid to ask those questions. So I think for Johnny, sometimes I make him a little uncomfortable with my willingness to ask those types of questions. But that's okay. I think that's why it works. We have different personalities. What you see on the air with Johnny and I is what you get. I mean, we have that same bickering, older brother, younger brother type of relationship off the air, whether we're group texting, he's sending me stupid memes and I'm telling him, you're annoying me. I'm trying to relax. Like, it's the same thing off the air with him and I as it is on the air. There's no acting. I do believe we truly love each other. We truly like doing this together. I think he's a great partner, very hardworking guy, does a lot of work for our show behind the scenes, a lot of work, and truly wants to be a really good, reporter and writer and podcaster and showrunner. And he does a great job when he does UMass games. So, hopefully he doesn't hear me talking about him this nicely because that certainly would probably blow his ego up a little bit. But I love working with him. It's one of the reasons why I like doing the show is because of, how good our relationship is, even when we're going at each other. We can laugh it off at the end. I mean, we went at each other pretty hard today about Mikko Rantanen's jersey getting retired. And like, after like 15 text messages, I just said, I can't have this conversation with you anymore. I like, if you don't understand why I'm saying what I'm saying, we can't talk about this. I can't help you anymore with this conversation. So, it's like a little kid, like pulling on your shirt. So, he's the best. And I know he's part of New York Rangers Nation. And I know you guys, all have a tight knit group there with the Rangers. And, I know people give us a hard time on our show for talking about them so much, but listen, they've been a massive story this year. Whether it was Shesterkin's contract, running Trouba out of town, leaking things this summer, starting the season okay, and then having one of the worst stretches we've seen in God knows how long. Now they're back playing really well. They're probably going to be a playoff team. I don't see how they won't be. Whether it's the Lafreniere back and forth about hundreds of points. I mean, there's something to talk about. They're an original six. They're a big market. Listen, I tell them all the time, don't apologize for talking about the New York Rangers. People want to hear about the New York Rangers. They do. They want to hear about the Rangers. So, it's part of the show. It's always going to be part of the show. I like watching the New York Rangers, and I always have, because I like watching Sam and I like listening to Sam Rosen. And so I watch a lot of Ranger hockey. I do. Probably up until they got really hard to watch, I probably watched them as much as some of the other teams that I watch, like as much as any team. For a while, I didn't watch them much because their entertainment value was zero. I mean, they were hard to watch. And now they're playing better. I watched the whole game against Colorado the other day. It was a very entertaining game. Like, I don't have skin in the game, so I want to be entertained. And that was an entertaining hockey game. So listen, I hope they can claw their way back in, and we know Igor Shesterkin's hard to beat in the playoffs. So, we'll see if they can get in. They're always going to be dangerous.
Oh yeah, we'll be keeping up for sure in Rangerland, and I'm hoping to get more guests on that have the same vision. Dan Rosen earlier last week had the same thought, so hopefully that's the way things are trending, Colby. And again, I really appreciate that you came on tonight,
Yep.
and I look forward to listening to Morning Cup of Hockey.
Yep. All right. Thanks for having me on, man. I good luck with your show, and we'll see what Quinnipiac can do this year. Never count them out. They win with less high end talent more than any team in the sport in the NCAA. I think Rand is as good a coach as there is at that level. And I have a lot of respect for that program that I did not have, not just because of the championship, but getting to know the program there over the last 4 or 5 years. I can tell you I didn't respect the program previous to that like I do now. And a lot of that has to do with the job that Rand and his staff have done and the relationship that I've built with him. Obviously, we shared a cool moment, like something that I just was like, wow, I really appreciate being a part of your moment, because it made me remember my moment with that game in particular.
Mhm.
But I have nothing but the utmost respect for those guys, and they're a tough out. I wouldn't want to draw them in the NCAA tournament. I even if they're a 4 seed, I wouldn't want to draw them. I certainly wouldn't want it.
We're gonna tack that on the board then. I'm gonna put that on the board for when that moment comes around. And again, this is the best time of the year for hockey. So everything coming up, Four Nations, NCAA tourney, and of course Stanley Cup playoffs soon down the road. So again, thanks so much. I mean, I feel like coming on, it's like talking about the hockey with anybody. So you
Yep.
make it real fun.
All right, man. Have a good night. I'll catch up with you soon. Okay, pal?
Yeah, thanks, Colby.
All right.